Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and joining me this week we have Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cameron?
Hey, what's going on, Trevor?
What is going on? So today is going to be our The Batman episode and Spoilercast. So in typical Spoilercast fashion, we will kind of give our spoiler-free thoughts on the movie first, and then we'll have a very clearly delineated timestamp of when we're going to dive into spoiler talk. Before we hop into any of that, though, a little bit of housekeeping for you. Other shows you can check out. We have That Bond Show. We're nearing the halfway point of That Bond Show, where Logan and I sit down every week and discuss a new movie in the Bond ecosystem of films. What are we up to? The Spy Who Loved Me, I think, is the last one that just came out. Yes, yeah, Spy Who Loved Me. So you can go catch that. It is YouTube only, youtube.com/thatnerdysite. Every Saturday is when those new episodes go live. We have, I think, all of our best of lists of 2021 are up and on the site now. So if you missed any of that, you can check out any of those. We also have Cameron's ongoing series, Friday Night Dying Light. New episodes every Friday evening as Cameron continues playing through Dying Light 2. Clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose. Or whatever. And then lastly, I just want to give one last shout out. Jazz's game over on Kickstarter called Retrograde. Their Kickstarter closes this week, so it's your last chance to go help support that if you are so inclined. There's a link in the description. It is a little retro arcade themed dice game, basically. Our company Resonim is making it. And it is the first game that our friend Jazz has gone and worked on with them. So shout out to Jazz and the Retrograde Kickstarter. So yeah. Other than that, if you like what you hear, please, as always, remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. So without further ado, Cameron, let us dive into The Batman spoiler-free thoughts. What did you think? You and I saw it last night. What did you think?
I thought it was incredible. It's truly an incredible film. I think that it has done something that I was not I was hoping for, but I don't think I could have reasonably expected, which is that it would set itself apart from the other Batman films. It's literally the what, in the last 10 years we've gotten 4 Batman films.
I mean, yeah, we would have gotten a couple of, Dark Knight came out in 2008.
So
we might have gotten Dark Knight Rises somewhere in the mix there, and then Batman v Superman and the Justice League stuff.
And then the Snyder Cut, if you include that as a separate film.
Yeah. Sure, yes.
Yeah. So this is the fifth one we've gotten, or fourth or fifth one, depending on how you want to count it. We've gotten the last 12 years. It's it has done an amazing job of setting itself apart from it, and also at the same time, I think it is, despite being on paper concept wise the same as you'd expect out of the Nolanverse trilogy. It sets itself completely apart from those films with a completely different style and approach to the same kind of concept of a grounded, grit-filled Batman film in a way that makes it, I think it's an absolutely stellar film, and it's definitely one of my favorite Batman films of all time. So
yeah, I agree with a lot of that. I think it has an incredible look and feel to this movie that, while reminiscent of elements of the Nolan stuff, also does feel kind of its own. It, I think, leans a little bit more into the noir elements of a classic Batman kind of comic and source material. It's the most detective-y Batman that I think we've seen. It's also, I would argue, probably the most just Batman time. We see there's very little Bruce Wayne in this movie compared to the amount of time we spend with the Batman. Um, Great performances all around. I think there's a ton of incredibly well like fleshed out characters and relationships and dynamics that get played with throughout this. I appreciate that this one, like, we don't need the origin of Batman. This is a couple years into his run, stuff like that. And so we don't rehash some of those like well-worn elements. It's almost the Spider-Man, the MCU Spider-Man version of things of like we've seen I've seen people describe it as like the popcorn and pearls moment so many times that we don't need to see that this iteration. We don't need to see the death of Thomas and Martha Wayne. Um, but we can still see how it is still clearly sitting with this, still, early on in his fighting career, version of Batman. Yeah, like Zoe Kravitz is great. I really
Oh my
like
god, yeah.
what Paul Dano brings to the role. I was realizing this is only the second movie I've ever actually seen Robert Pattinson in. It's basically this and Goblet of Fire when he was Cedric Diggory, and that's it. I missed all of the Twilight stuff, and I've missed, I know he's been doing a lot of cool stuff in the indie
Oh yeah,
scene of
his
films.
I would say ever since post Twilight, Reign Over Me, not Reign Over Me. I think that's the Adam Sandler. But there's Reign Over Me is an Adam Sandler flick. But there's a film that he's in. It's a romance film, and it's like post Twilight and like the first Twilight film. It's absolutely amazing. I think the only film that he's done since Twilight that I haven't cared for was Water for Elephants. Um, but like that, outside of that, he's just done some just really incredible indie work.
Mhm.
And also he was the Dauphin in Tom or not Thomas Chalamet.
Timothy
Is it Thomas?
Timothy
Timothy,
Chalamet.
thank you. Timothy Chalamet is the King on Netflix. He was the Dauphin with one of the most amazing performances with just like an absolute trashy French accent, just super like not great, but just carries it through charisma, and just like his Dauphin is just such a character,
Mhm.
and he's only in like 2 scenes. It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
But I really think that he is a truly great actor who, I think unfortunately will always be tied to the or maybe to the positive because it got him his career, but he's tied forever to the Twilight films, and unfortunately that's what most people have seen him in.
Mhm.
They have not seen him in like some of like like really great indie roles that he's done.
Yeah.
So I thought him going into being Batman was an odd choice for his career because he's been an indie king for the last, decade.
Mhm. Yeah, but I think he brings, and I think that it's an interesting like for the mass pop culture. This is like his return. This is him breaking away from the Twilight side of things, and I think will kind of recontextualize and have people looking at his career in a new light, especially if this this version of the Batman continues into follow up adventures and stuff like that.
God, I hope so. I hope so. It
Yeah.
was so good.
Jeffrey Wright is phenomenal as Gordon. Colin
I was
Farrell
un-
is like
I,
completely
yeah.
unrecognizable
Oh my
as
god.
the Penguin / Oz. Yeah. What were you gonna say about Jeffrey Wright?
Jeffrey Wright, I was like, oh, he'll be a good Gordon. He was such an amazing Gordon.
Mm-hmm.
His Gordon is so subdued in comparison to, the night or the 80s and 90s era of Gordon, where it was, old white guy with a mustache, and then you have the Gary Oldman, the like either very subdued and like grit, or like over the top yellow, like yelling bombastic that he's kind of like are the kind of memes that have lasted from the Nolan trilogy about Gordon.
I don't think Gary Oldman is that in the Nolan stuff. Like Gary Oldman has those vibes, but I don't think he really exercised them a ton in the Nolan trilogy as Gordon. At least I can't think of any like moments where he's big and over the top and bombastic. But I think what really works here with Jeffrey Wright is that it's the most kind of like partners in crime that we've seen Gordon and Batman working together. Obviously, they've been doing this for some time now.
for about 2 years. They say
Yeah,
like his diary at the beginning of the film. Also, by the way, Batman's like his. It's not a diary. It's his observational notes.
observational notes of Gotham. Yeah,
Yeah,
um,
it's which is like so detective-y and scientific, and I love it. It's so great.
yeah. I want to dive into those a little bit more when we kind of dive into some of the spoiler stuff, but the the relationship between the Batman and Jim, I think is really nice,
Hmm.
and yeah, just kind of definitely gives like a lived in world of this Gotham, despite the fact that this is like a new Gotham to us, cinematically and stuff. You in particular were really drawn to like the
I
look
was.
and feel of the city, when we talked about it briefly last night after getting out of there. Um, do you want to kind of expound on
Yeah,
that, elaborate on that?
sure. And I like that it's a bit of a spoiler-free thing as well. I was just so amazed because I feel like there's so much about other Batman films where it's clearly trying to evoke like an actual place, like an actual real life place. Whether it's the Nolan versus Chicago, like the industrial, like painting Gotham as like an industrial city, like Chicago or Pittsburgh, whether it's more of like the big city type feel for like the New York City of like feel of the you know, both. I would actually feel like that's both the feel of the Burton films as well as the um I'm trying to remember his name. It's slipping from my mind, but he directed Batman Forever and Batman
Schumacher,
and Robin.
yeah, the Joel
Schumacher.
Schumacher.
Yeah, Schumacher and Burton both went for a Gotham is New York type feel. And then you have Nolan, of course, I just mentioned Pittsburgh slash Chicago, like getting that industrial city type vibe. And I feel like this is the first time. Oh, and then of course, like the weird Oakland, San Francisco vibe of Gotham and Metropolis that they put together in Batman v Superman. Um, I have just felt there like this is the first time I've actually felt like Gotham feels. I'm going to use this term, but it's not the term that you would normally associate with it, but fantastical, and not in like a fantasy level, but in a you are showing me a city I've never seen before. This is a place that I have never seen photos of. I've never heard like this is a completely new city built from somebody's imagination is how I feel about this. I don't feel like I'm getting like it has a weird feel of like there are parts of the city that are European old world type feel, the like cobblestone streets, and it's and like you called it as Times Square, like its version of Times Square, but its version of Times Square is incredibly European with cobblestone streets, and it reminds me maybe more of like a London type thing, like a scene out of like a downtown London. You have parts of that city that feel industrial. You have parts of that city that feel, you know, the wharf and like the sea line and stuff like that they have going for it feels something like straight up picked up out of like a noir harbor type scenes that you'd see, and it's just like it's completely implemented in the perfect way to make the city feel larger than like, oh, we're just using like a stock version of a city. And instead, like there's this moment at the beginning of the film where, like on the motorcycle, it's going through it, and you think, oh, it's going to be leaving town to go upstate to the manor or whatever, and it doesn't. It just goes to a different part of the city, and you realize, oh, this is a actual large city.
Hmm.
Like it takes time to get places in this city, and like so it feels real. It feels lived in. It feels larger than life, and at the same time, the city's iconography feels totally original, inspired by maybe a couple of things, but overall, just like straight up out of the mind. So whoever like the location design, like location selection, set design for these like larger cityscaping shots, beautifully done. And I honestly just cannot praise the architecture choices enough for this film. It's just outright phenomenal. I can't believe how good it is.
Yeah. I think kind of the last little things I want to touch on, kind of spoiler free wise, are I think kind of bouncing off of that, the look of this movie is incredibly well shot and incredibly like deliberately shot and deliberately thought out. It's and shout out to the cinematographer Greg Fraser, who is most recently worked on something like Dune, and has a a great eye and great kind of career behind him in and obviously as a Batman story, a lot of this takes place in the evening, but the moments that they do kind of play with, acting in the daylight or acting at sunset, sunrise, something like that, I think help pop and help add a little bit of like emphasis and a new flavor to a lot of those moments. But then also, even though probably 75% of this movie is nighttime stuff, it feels dynamic and it feels alive and it feels at times very vibrant, using the lights of the city, and some of the action and whatnot that they play around with. And then I also want to shout out the score, is another Michael Giacchino score. Obviously he's kind of one like he's one of the people kind of following in those John Williams footsteps these days of like just working on all these big blockbusters and stuff. And I would say like it the score, well, it might not be as distinctly memorable as some of the other kind of
Mhm.
like iconic, Batman themes of, Zimmer or Danny Elfman or something like that. Like it serves this movie incredibly well in its understated subtleties and stuff like that. It never gets in the way, but it was almost always helping like really set the tone and underline what we were seeing on the screen in a way that I thought was really cool. And admittedly, I'm not typically the music guy, so the fact that it was something that like stood out to me as like like they're really utilizing the music very well in these moments, I thought was really cool.
The way that it was subdued felt, I'm going to use this term and I don't mean it the way that it's going to come off, but unnatural. Like it felt um haunting. This is a hauntingly subdued soundtrack in the way that they choose to use it. The Batman theme I feel is the most haunting, like almost horror version of a Batman theme that I've heard my entire life. Like I've heard the kind of like Cape Crusader like da 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 da, like the classic Batman animated series Danny Elfman era of sound of the Batman theme. Then you have like the more booming high end orchestral version of Zimmer, and then you get this, and it's a total like it fits the tone of the film perfectly. And once again, on paper, on concept, like it's doing the same, like it has the same job that Zimmer had, but it does it in a completely different way, in a way that's wholly unique to the film itself. I think it's going to get overlooked by the other aspects of this film, but by no means should it. It's a very spectacular soundtrack that does nothing but add accents and flourishes and just more eccentricity to the scenes that you're watching. It's not a hey, I'm going to write this thing that can then be performed in concert halls and people will be like, "Oh, what an incredible piece." Oh, that's the piece from that movie. It's this is built for the like it is designed for the film. It is like the music is written for the film, truly in that like in truly written for the film. And I still think that outside of that, it still stands out as being just a hauntingly beautiful soundtrack.
Hmm.
I love the Batman theme from this film. It might be my favorite Batman theme
Yeah.
that we've ever got.
Any final notes before we head into spoiler territory?
Yes, see this movie in theaters. Do not wait for it to come out on demand. Do not wait for like go out. This is a film that the spectacle of seeing it on a bigger screen cannot be emphasized enough. There are some moments in this film that will otherwise seem kind of like or like not as big of a deal unless you are seeing a large version of it. And I think that this is a film that is a treat to see in theater. Like it is a true. This is one of those films like Spider-Man: No Way Home or something that like the experience of getting to see it on a larger screen with that massive surround sound of a movie theater, that energy of being in a theater with it, I think is going to help out so much in making it an enjoyable experience. But in no way is also seeing it at home going to take away from how great this film is. So,
I will echo that with the caveat of like it is a 3 hour long movie,
oh yeah,
and you know certainly like only go if you feel safe in doing so. Obviously, if you still
that is
have
true.
concerns and
Yeah.
all that stuff, like you will still be able to enjoy this movie in the comfort and safety of your own home down the line. But yes, if you are, you know, so inclined, I think there is, you know, a cool extra um, punch to certain elements of the movie. I wouldn't say, I don't think there was anything in this that like felt like, oh, they shot it in IMAX like Dark Knight or Dark Knight
Oh yeah, no,
Rises or
not
anything
like
like
that.
that.
No.
That like
Mm.
that was like, oh, this was shot specific, but it just like the holistic kind of experience of, yeah, like all of these elements working together in a theater setting. I think do help in many cases with like the scale of Gotham and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, shout out to that. Okay, well with that, let's
Oh,
oh yeah.
final note of non spoilers. If you're like, oh man, I haven't really seen any trailers for it, don't watch it.
Yeah. There's
Seriously,
definitely
don't watch any. Like
that
there are some scenes that are better in the film than they are in the trailers. Don't watch the trailers.
yeah, that was definitely something you and I talked about of like, oh, like the movie is very much shot for the perspective of you've never seen any of this stuff in these trailers. Like certain elements get like meaty introductions in the movie that if you've seen trailers, it's like, oh, well, I knew that was already going to be there, or I knew that was coming, or I knew that moment was coming and stuff. Um, but that said, like seeing the trailers that the handful of trailers that I had seen or whatever didn't, I don't think, diminish from my experience. And I think even with that, like the story goes places I wasn't expecting it to go.
Oh yeah, no,
Um,
the story is completely like not
yeah,
like the story is great. Like the story is like we'll get into it in spoilers, but it's one of the better Batman stories that we've gotten in a long time, and it's cohesive and thought like and like it goes places that are just phenomenal. So
yeah,
definitely like, but the reason I said that is if you haven't seen any of the trailers and you're like, oh man, I want to go watch a trailer now that these guys have talked about it to get excited to see the movie. Take it from us. Don't watch a trailer. Just go see the movie. But once again, also like my caveat, the caveat about like if you feel okay or comfortable going to the theater, if you ever feel not comfortable for whatever reason to go out right now, like still don't like that's completely valid and totally understandable. I don't want to come off as being unfeeling or inconsiderate of people's reservations concerning everything going on right now.
yeah. And
So
I don't think you did. I wanted to, you know, add that in as a stress because I know it is still a thought that a lot of people have, and it's some I
for
see
sure.
in my timeline too of like, man, I wish I could see this, you know, from the comfort of my home. I wish I didn't have to try and dodge spoilers for the next couple months until this comes home
Yeah.
because there are people that just aren't there yet, and you know, totally understandable. But yeah. Okay. So with all that said, let's hop into our spoiler side of things. So last chance, dip away, come back. This will be here, you know, after you've seen it.
I'm about to
Enjoy.
lay out a fat spoiler. I'm about to lay out a super fat spoiler. Get out
All right.
now.
So hit us with your super fat spoiler there, Cam.
Dude, the way they lead you by the nose, you and Batman along the on the nose, like just taking you by the nose that makes you like convinced the Riddler's figured out Batman's identity
Mm-hmm.
as Bruce Wayne. The way that it's like everything, everything, the way that it pulls you along, and then at the very moment, it's like Paul Dano's fantastic, and he's like the only Bruce Wayne is the only one that got away,
Yeah.
and you're like, and everybody has that moment of like taking in a deep breath of going, wait, what?
Yeah. It's like the first thing that the Batman in that scene reacts to. So obviously this is the scene like after the Riddler has been captured and is there talking with the Batman in Arkham, and has that like that monologue that starts out with him like lamenting Bruce Wayne, that immediately like is shot in a way that makes you think he is talking to Batman and addressing him as Bruce Wayne, but no, he's just reminiscing of like, yeah, I was an orphan, but nobody gave a shit about me because poor Bruce Wayne's parents died. He wasn't a, like this guy being a billionaire, he doesn't know what it feels like to be an orphan. Like that's not actual orphan. That's spoiled rich kid. And it's like I think what I loved most about that scene is it is a perspective that I don't think gets addressed nearly enough in the like,
Yeah.
it's the thing that like, such a common thread among so many superheroes is like tragic backstory as orphans or something like that. But you know, uh, uh, Peter Parker growing up as an orphan versus Bruce Wayne growing up as an orphan, wildly different circumstances.
Oh yeah, totally.
And I think so often that gets glossed over of like, okay, yeah, like it's tragic that your parents were murdered right in front of you, but also you still went home and had billions of dollars at your disposal. And, maybe you should have had some grief counseling or something so you didn't turn into this crazy person that is clearly working through some stuff. I think that was one of the elements that like I really liked about this, is that like it's not presenting Batman as like any sense of well-adjusted. Like
No, not at all.
this is a problem that he spends most of his time. This Bruce Wayne is a recluse and doesn't go out and hasn't really been seen in public significantly. So, he's not really having to juggle the double life that we so often see in these kinds of stories, but spending that much time as vengeance isn't doing him really any favors. And I think that's kind of
Which
like what
is yeah.
the opening of the movie is talking about, of like, he's been doing this for 2 years, but is it helping? And
Yeah, that yeah.
yeah.
I think that's like the overall like I think something that gets kind of like people don't focus enough on is both that, but also the other side of it, which is money is not a comfort for grief. It is not something that resolves grief. And so but it's like that is in its own way kind of like saying like, yeah, the Riddler is right about, yeah, he has billions of dollars, but also that's but from Bruce's perspective, we can see that is no comfort for the grief and horror of never having an answer to why your parents were murdered in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't get like, it's true. Like the white privilege of Bruce Wayne is brought up a couple of times and it's like thrown right in Batman's face. At one point it's thrown in Bruce Wayne's face by somebody who doesn't know who he is.
Yeah.
And it's an entire like moment that's like Bruce Wayne is very aware of the privilege he had, but it's hard for him to see the privilege because money is no comfort for grief. It is no like money. It's like, oh, I'll dry my tears on all the billions of dollars I have. It doesn't change that an 8-year-old boy, and that's something that's touched on a couple of times that I've really, really enjoyed. What not enjoyed, but I thought was great was the way when Batman sees a kid's footprint in the blood, and it's like, and they mention like, oh yeah, the kid found him,
Mm-hmm.
and he looks in, and it's like that moment of like seeing your parent brutally murdered.
Yeah.
Viscerally murdered. Now, was he there for the murdering? No, but being the one that finds your dad's brutally murdered corpse and stepping in the puddle of blood,
Mm-hmm.
like it's wild.
Yeah.
It's so wild that and he looks, and the way that Batman looks at this kid is so great.
Yeah.
It's such a great moment of this kid just sees Batman looking at him on a level of like pity and concern.
Mm-hmm.
But from Bruce's perspective, he's looking at an image of himself.
Exactly. Yeah. I think like the way both Batman and Bruce look at that kid at the mayor's son throughout the film, and like he's the first kid that he saves kind of at the end of the film, Um,
Well, he's
uh,
the first. The kid's the
yeah,
first person to
he's the
trust
first,
Batman.
exactly. He's the first one to come to Batman, kind of thing, when Batman's trying to help. Like all of that for me is very clearly setting up this is a Bruce Wayne that absolutely will like take on a young Dick Grayson after, you know, the tragic loss of his parents, when he's ready to kind of, you know, have that like he's absolutely somebody who will reach out and, you know, latch on to somebody he sees as a kindred spirit who went through that same sense of tragedy. And it's like it touches on, I think, another one of the elements that I really love about this movie was how similar Bruce and he's not Enigma in this, but like the how similar like Batman and the Riddler, and what a fine line it is between those two, and what a fine
Hmm.
line it is between Batman and Catwoman in terms of like with Batman and the Riddler, like one of the opening shots we get is like this voyeuristic look into like the
Hmm.
mayor, and we're hearing, I think, the Batman's voiceover throughout or something
We
like
are.
that. And it's like it's just it's deliberately setting you up to not know if this is Batman watching, or if it is somebody else watching, and obviously
Oh,
it
you
ends up
know what?
being the
No, I
Riddler or
don't think
something.
I don't think the monologue is going over that. I think we are just getting like the raw sounds of the city
Oh, that's
at
right,
that
yeah.
point.
And we're hearing like heavy breathing or something like that. It's
Yeah, it's a lot of heavy
unsettling,
breathing.
but
Yeah.
that's mirrored then later when we see Batman spying on Selina,
Hmm.
and we see like obviously both the Riddler and Bruce, you know, did have like orphan kind of backgrounds and ties to, you know, all that
There's
stuff.
that awesome photo. There is that
Yeah.
awesome photo of little Riddler in the
Hmm.
choir, and then just a little bit further, like in the perspective of the photo, a little bit closer in the perspective of the photo, little Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
That is such a like. I was so. Here's the thing, and I'll just put it out there. I was so afraid that we were going to get a Thomas Wayne Jr. um thing from it because somebody brought that up at one point. I'm like, I really hope they don't make like the Riddler
Mm.
Batman's brother.
Yeah.
I really hope we don't get that. I really hope that we stay away from that because I do not think that's a good idea. I think that partially ruins a good chunk of what makes the Riddler great, which is something that is shared by the Joker,
Hmm.
which is we don't actually know who they are, like who they are, what their backstory is. It's like the Joker's famous point. If I could choose anything, I'd rather it be multiple choice. Kind of like a like you can have so many different backgrounds; they could all be true. None of them could be true. I like that aspect of it. It's like the Riddler is a nameless orphan who was a victim of the renewal plan, which also, by the way, the renewal plan is a brilliant like thread through for the entire thing
Hmm.
because it brings up questions of like, did Thomas create it to be a slush fund? Was it like what is it? And it turns out like the renewal plan is how like Falcone's been controlling the city for 20 years.
Hmm.
Like all of that from like, yeah, it was a trickle down economics was
It's
a good idea.
it's, I mean, as somebody who's worked in the community foundation space, like, yeah, that kind of like private foundation like fund is absolutely like rife for exploitation because there's no oversight on so much of that stuff, or if it is, like, it's very loosely enforced. And so
Yeah.
yeah, at once Thomas Wayne passes, it's very easy for other entities to step in and be manipulated, like, because it could be that there's like a money manager managing those funds, but they could absolutely be like under Falcone's thumb or something like that.
Oh yeah,
um
totally and completely. Because all they
uh
have, but also like, I love the aspect that Thomas Wayne is just a man.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
the way they play with it, of it being like when Falcone talks to him and says, "I came to your father like on the doorstep. I saw you looking down at me on like, well, your father operated on me.
Hmm.
Like you don't know what that means to me." And he goes, "I know how much it means. It means he took the Hippocratic oath."
Yeah.
And like venerating his father and then finding like that's how you know in a moment that like Bruce venerates his father so much
Hmm.
um it's like, I don't care about these cufflinks at all. And then he finds out his father gave them to Alfred. So now they're actually important. It's those moments, and Bruce, and it's something every person has to realize at some point in their life, which is your parents don't really know more than you.
Yeah.
Your parents were trying to figure out their way through things the same way you do every day.
Yeah. Like they're fallible as well. Like they made mistakes. And it's
Thomas. Yeah.
In his instance in particular, it's hard to, like, obviously with what he knew about his father when his father's, untimely taken from him kind of thing. Like he wouldn't have any reason to suspect otherwise until you kind of dig into like the underground elements and stuff. And I like that kind of turns a couple times. Like he gets kind of the story from Falcone and confronts Alfred with it, and Alfred gives him like, no, like he doesn't know the full story. Here's what I knew about your father. Yes, he made mistakes. Everybody does, but he tried to be a good man and that kind of thing. And I think his mistake was, trusting the wrong person, and he was gonna basically own up to it and confront it, and gets killed that night and stuff.
Which then brings into a like wonderful thing. It's like, was it Maroni? Was it Falcone?
Yeah.
Was it just a random mugger? And like when Alfred just says like, I have thought about it every day for the last 20 years. Like for Alfred, if Alfred knew who it was for sure, Alfred would have killed them and taken them out.
Yeah.
But he doesn't know. And he's not going to cross that line with no knowledge of it. And I think that's like, it brings into light, like Bruce didn't come up with this idea of no killing as like his own thing. It's something that he got from Alfred. It's something that he got, like, you can't cross that line. Something that I found very interesting though, it's like, there's that line and it's who will you cross it for? Because you don't cross it for yourself. And it's amazing because Thomas Wayne didn't cross that line to secure his mayoralship. He didn't cross that line to preserve his image. He crossed it because his wife, like, and also it's an amazing reveal that it turns out Bruce's mom went through the same thing he did, except it was his grandmother murdering his grandfather in front of his mother. And it'd be like, and it caused her to, and like, yeah, it is shit. Like, she went through something incredibly traumatic and was instead, because of the healthcare system at the time, was institutionalized multiple times for it rather than given like constant therapy. And he has like, his wife is in a good place and he knows this kind of thing is going to just like hurt her in some deep level and way. Either it brings up her parents' like gruesome murder, or it focuses on her and makes her feel like she's like Martha Wayne. The twist is Martha Wayne was not entirely mentally stable, which is fine. Don't want to despair, discourage mental health wellness. Like, it's something that a lot of people struggle with, especially after trauma, incredible trauma, which makes total sense. And also it's like, well,
but also the masses are not nearly as like accepting and understanding of that.
Yeah.
And political people will absolutely use that as a tool and as a weapon and be relentless and ruthless about that kind of stuff. And yeah, it sucks. So he saw that as an attack on his wife and like wanted to put the fear of God in this person, not thinking smart. Like, I mean, like, admittedly, yeah, he made a mistake, went to the wrong guy for that fear of God thing because
the thing is, he's thinking he's going to the right person because who's the person anybody would be the most be so afraid of?
Yeah.
It's this mob boss Falcone.
Yeah, he just didn't realize that, like, of course Falcone's not going to have like a limit on that. He's going to take advantage of the situation. Yeah,
not only that, but also when Falcone reveals, like, because Falcone, like, we have no reason to doubt that this reporter was actually on Maroni's payroll. And if Falcone's story about Maroni being afraid of Thomas Wayne being already in Falcone's pocket, because Falcone goes to him to save Falcone's life, and so the question comes up of like, well, is Maroni now afraid of Falcone controlling Wayne, and does that mean Falcone's going to get more power when Wayne becomes mayor? And so it becomes this whole thing is like, is the Maroni conspiracy that Falcone paints legitimate? Completely. It's a completely legitimate possibility. And so because of that, if this reporter was on, like, if while interrogating this reporter, he finds out he's on Maroni's payroll, one, this means that this guy's not afraid because he's like, you're not going to like do anything because Maroni's not going to like, because I'm on Maroni's payroll. I'm doing this for Maroni. So I have to do it because if I stop, Maroni's going to take retaliation against me. So there's no fear for this guy. And so he says, when fear's not enough, what do you have to do? And that's once again, an incredible turn on the concept of Batman, which is how do you stop this crime and how do you stop these things when fear is not enough? Like when vengeance and fear is the wrong choice, what is it? And the answer is hope, which Batman reveals at the end.
Yeah.
Which is brilliant. I freaking love that. It's
so wild. Good. I think how effectively this movie kind of tells that as like his arc for this movie is like, like he gets that from Falcone. He gets it when, that one of the last like goons that he takes out says their vengeance. And he realizes like this city needs more than vengeance. This city needs something else. This city needs that hope. But going back to
which is so good. It's so good that this Batman story is a story that you like. Once again, on paper, you wouldn't want to like. You don't think this is going to be a successful Batman story because it's more of a Superman story. I hope, right? But no, it works out so well. Like Matt Reeves has done such an amazing job of putting together this movie. It's why I love it so much. It's because it took me places I didn't expect to go in a Batman movie. And then it elevates Batman as a film, as a comic book movie to an even higher level than we've ever gotten it. Like, and I love the Nolan trilogy, but the Nolan trilogy never elevates Batman. It never elevates Bruce Wayne. It never, like, a lot of problems with it is he never gets this like arc in those films.
It's
Dark Knight is famous for Bruce Wayne not really having an arc. Things just happen to him.
Mm-hmm.
So I love it.
Like, Bruce and the Batman spend so much of this movie with the mindset of if you're a hammer, everything you see is a nail, and all he sees are the criminals. And so when the light goes out, he thinks of the fear that it's, imbuing in them. He doesn't spend enough time thinking about the hope that he needs to instill in the rest of the city to keep them from going down that, path of bleakness and sadness.
You have that amazing moment where I was wondering when it happened, in Gotham Square stadium or whatever they called it, their Madison Square Garden. When he jumps on that thing, I'm like, well, why is he doing that to disconnect it? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And then because I missed all the people hiding in the water under the rubble. Yeah. I missed that. And it doesn't focus on it very long, but Batman sees it and he does that. And the moment I was like, that's weird. Why are they having him in the water? Why does he have this torch thing? And then he like takes the torch to these people who are imprisoned under this rubble, and he moves it around and he frees them, but they're still afraid because all he's done is instill fear. Yeah. He's not instilled any hope in these people. And it takes a child who did feel something with him in that moment to take his hand. And that, like, once again, also coming in from the idea of like from the mouth of babes. Yeah. True. Like, you will find truth. Like, and then it turns out Batman has literally, by doing that one thing, cutting that thing that I thought was like weird and stupid. And then you have that beautiful iconography, cinematography of him leading out this group of people by the torch. And it's like, he's holding the hope. He's holding the light. Yeah. And it's like, which also plays into when it's like, you have to bring the rat the rat with wings into the light. Mm-hmm. What's companion to the rat with wings thing that we see in the film of a bat is a rat with wings. Yeah. The rat with wings leads them into it, like through the light. It's so like, there's so many things about this movie that are so great, Trevor. Yeah. I love it.
So I will say, like, I didn't piece together that there was like a group of people in the rubble there kind of, or whatever, but it was like that giant wire is gonna electrocute anybody that's down in that water if the power
Yeah.
isn't cut from that. And so yeah, he slices the power so it becomes a dead wire. And I think like once he's down there, yeah, he's got to get people to safety and figure that out and stuff. I wanted to circle back though to the um I love the Alfred and Batman dynamic of like, you know, Batman comes home from that first night with kind of the clue and the cipher or whatever, and Alfred gets to work on it while Batman cleans up and, you know, rests or whatever.
Well,
And like
after he admonishes him for being Batman, by the way.
yeah, yeah.
Alfred never fully condones being Batman.
Hmm.
But at the same time, Alfred's not going to not help Bruce.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like he's like, you're wasting like this, and it brings into the conflict that's currently going on with Bruce and Alfred, which is Alfred is trying to be the fatherly figure that he knows Bruce needs. Bruce is rejecting a fatherly figure that is not actually his own father.
Yeah.
And it's like they're conflicting over the idea of legacy, which is like Bruce, you have a responsibility to the city to be Bruce Wayne to it, and him being like, Bruce Wayne can't do anything. The legacy of my family is Batman. And it's like this conflict that honestly gets resolved by Alfred getting blown up.
Yeah.
and Bruce realizing without saying it, you have been my father figure all along.
Yeah.
And I like when he says somebody I care about, like,
yeah, I thought I'd mastered
yeah.
all this fear. I thought I was fine, but like seeing somebody I care about go through that and like feeling those feelings again, like I like, yeah, it is a nice, like it is the like, how would Batman say this without, you know, opening up in a way that like would be healthy and adjusted and well adjusted. He's gonna
Right?
say it in the most Batman way possible of like, I felt fear again. Thanks, Dick. kind of like, and like,
Yeah.
because even that, like, as like the first thing that happens when Alfred comes to, like he's aggressive and he's like, "You lied to me, Alfred." Like he's confrontational about that. Like he's not handling any of this healthily.
The way that Alfred comes back when he says, "I talked to Falcone," and Alfred's like that bitch,
Mhm.
like that bitch Falcone. He goes, Falcone, like you are looking at it from the way that Falcone sees the situation. You're not looking at it from the way I saw the situation. I knew your father. I was supposed to protect them. Like, and that happens a little bit later. He says that, but he goes, you don't understand who your father was. Your father was a man, and your father loved your mother, and he would do anything to keep your mother safe.
Mm-hmm.
And that includes from this terrible thing. He tried, like Bruce Wayne or Thomas Wayne, like flat out tried to bribe a reporter.
Yeah. And it
like
and
that alone could have ruined his career, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or his mayoral campaign. He tried to bribe somebody with information who had information about his wife. That alone could have done it. But then when the guy wouldn't say no, instead of it being like, well, I guess I better prepare for the worst, it was, I'm going to do whatever I can within my power to keep this man quiet because I am not going to let him hurt my wife.
Mm-hmm.
But because he's a doctor, because he took the Hippocratic Oath, he just wants him to be scared. But he doesn't know this guy's on, we talked about this already, Maroni's payroll, all of that.
Yeah.
And so what does he do when he inadvertently caused a man to be murdered? He's going to turn himself in and he's going to rat the entire thing out.
Yeah. I think it also
so
creates just an interesting parallel that then gets paid off, obviously, with like, yeah, like you said, what is going to make Bruce cross that line? And it's almost, you know, the guy attacking Catwoman at the end. And it like he you know, shoots himself up with that adrenaline and just goes to town and nearly kills some dude until Jim and the rest of the GCPD pull him off him, kind of thing. And it is just like there's so many symmetrical kinds of moments like that. Obviously, like one of the things you and I talked about the last night, that the move, like this is what I think maybe one of the weaker elements of the movie is. I love like the Riddler's plot and the riddles themselves, because like even as we figure out part of them, we're not getting like the full picture. We're not getting like the double meaning sometimes until, you know, it's revealed to us. But like, yeah, the recurring like Rada Alada rat with wings that like they talk about it being a stool pigeon, they talk about it being a penguin has wings, a falcon has wings. It's like, yeah, but a bat is typically what you think of when you think of a rat with wings, and like
and nobody says it,
and nobody addresses that. It is the elephant in the room among those. Like it could have been, because I think that
and it also wasn't the answer. It wasn't the answer to the riddle even.
Exactly, and I think it's the kind of thing that like it could have been said in the same, because like the first time El Rada Alada gets brought up is freaking Alfred basically saying like his Spanish is a little weird, but like El Rada Alada, and then it comes back that it should be La Rada Alada kind of thing later on. But like it could have been like they could have thrown it out there of like the Batman. I mean, yeah, I guess it could be the Batman, but like it also
but
is
why,
this
like,
or
why
whatever.
does,
Like,
yeah,
what
why is his objective unmasking Batman when that doesn't seem to be the MO of what he's trying to do?
yeah, like what does he care? I'm not tied to these other figures or anything like that. What is, yeah, how would that?
But he
So I
is,
think,
he's Bruce. Anyway,
yeah, he is as Bruce. But even that, like, I would say that the Bruce Wayne ness of the Riddler's plot is like that's that is just a personal vendetta and a personal grievance that the kid that the Riddler has that doesn't tie into taking down the mayor and taking down the corrupt DA and taking down the corrupt commissioner and stuff like that.
It's the only one he doesn't do himself. It's the only one he directly does not confront.
He does send he sends the bomb for
he sends the bomb.
Bruce
Not only
Wayne's
that, but bold of him to assume Bruce Wayne, the billionaire pampered guy that he thinks Bruce Wayne is, would open his own mail.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
especially something for Bruce Wayne's eyes only from somebody who Bruce Wayne doesn't know is not going to be opened by Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, I guess. But yeah, I think that was like, even that sequence I thought was like, because obviously we're a step ahead and we know, oh shit, like Alfred's about to get fucked. But I love then the reveal of that happened an hour ago, sir. I'm so sorry.
That was so good.
Like
when they did
we
that,
think it's
so
happening
good.
in sync and in time, but no, we're getting like snippets of a flashback effectively. Just another way in which the movie is shot in such a interesting and dynamic, like it gives us the breadcrumbs to be one step ahead of the Riddler, but like when the story needs us to be behind, we will be behind.
Yeah,
I think it was a really
a great example of that is the flooding. Like there's a part of you that thinks, oh, he's actually a step ahead of the Riddler. He's going to stop the flooding from happening. We're seeing just kind of like what could have happened or what would have happened. Mm-hmm. But no, they own it. They're like, no, he was one step ahead of Batman because Batman was too concerned, like I said at the beginning, too concerned with believing the Riddler knew his identity.
Yeah.
Because he was targeting Bruce Wayne. And so, and for when like that revealed that it's like, no, Bruce Wayne's the only one that got away. It's that. And it's like that moment of like, wait, so what is the final clue? Like, what is the answer to the final question then? Mm-hmm. The final riddle. What is the actual answer?
Yeah. What did I miss? What I need to go and find? And
he goes to it. And by the way, I love the fact that it's that one cop who at the beginning was just like, I can't believe we got this guy here and he's doing this. Mm-hmm. And then he goes, yeah, can't believe the dude used a carpet tool for it.
Yeah,
it's a tucker.
It's a tucker.
My uncle works in installation. Like you use that to like it's a tucker. And he made like Batman realizing it goes, it's like, yeah, Batman probably wouldn't think about a carpet, like a carpet layers tool. Mm-hmm. He sees it as a murder weapon, not as a tool, which is funny because it's like, yeah, of course, Batman, even outside of the privilege of Bruce Wayne, would not see a murder weapon for anything other than a murder weapon.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a higher meaning. It doesn't he doesn't see it as a clue to the greater riddle, mm-hmm. which is what Riddler left it for. It's phenomenal. I loved it. It's so great.
Let's talk about the Catwoman side of things.
So, oh my God. Okay. First off, I was like, I don't know about this casting when it got announced. I was so goddamn wrong. Holy shit, she is so incredible. As an actress and like as a Catwoman, and just like also just like when she walks in for her first shot, vavoom, like immediately your eyes drawn to like how gorgeous she is. Mm-hmm. And because she's so subdued in everything she has on compared to all the other ravers at the club. Mm-hmm. and like what she's doing, and then like when she's in her apartment and she's getting suited up, and Bruce Wayne's just creeping on her.
Yeah. Yeah, Bruce Wayne kind of a creepy perv for for parts of this.
No way, somebody
Like
who's like, I'm doing a stakeout, sir. That's just voyeurism.
Exactly, like inadvertently discovers secret identity of this other, costume vigilante that he may or may not have already known about, kind of thing. Like, I think is an interesting,
Also,
fun
it
flavor to like, oh, he just kind of accidentally like discovers that she's Catwoman.
also turns out Batman or Bruce Wayne's super into boots. He's got a boot thing.
Sure. But like even
And
that,
that's a
like
joke. It's because it focuses on like
right,
it's
yeah,
a red herring because at one point
yeah,
Falcone's date to the mayor's memorial is like wearing the same kind of boot
yeah,
that he noticed on Selena earlier.
yep,
Which also is a tie-in to her connection to Falcone, which
yep.
is great.
But yeah, like
Also,
even
Falcone's really creepy. If that's the way you greet your child, that's super fucking creepy.
yeah, John Turturro a little. Well, he doesn't know she does
Oh, that's true.
she
That's
doesn't
true.
know that she's like she's eye candy to him too, which is extra weird, and that probably is a one of those last things that goes through his mind at the end of the film. But yeah, like the kind of the introduction, like Selena out there on a motorcycle, just like Batman's kind of going through the city on a
Yep.
motorcycle,
Oh, dude, can we
and
talk about this for? Oh, actually, let's keep talking about Selena for a minute, and then I want to remind me that put a pin in this. Remind me that we need to take it out.
yeah, but like I love that like they obviously like they kind of are working the same case but have very different objectives in that case,
Yep.
and so they're like aligned as long as it is benefiting both of them. But as soon as like Selena gets her lead goes one direction that is not the direction that Bruce is looking for, she bails. And like I love like the movie doesn't play a ton with like tech and gadgets, but like I love the idea of these contact lenses that are recording everything, because Batman's nights are such a blur. He has to like then go back and kind of like recap
Yep.
things, or like the tech is doing something that he's not able to do in the moment. I thought was a cool, extra layer to things. But yeah, like just
Also, it's not
them
immediate. It's
working
not a magic.
together.
It's also
Yeah,
not a magical tool. It
yeah,
takes time to do facial recognition.
yeah. I loved kind of their camaraderie, and the relationship that then gets formed. Like they're both clearly wounded people, obviously, and they're finding like solace in that shared pain that they have with one another. And as
Even though
is
Selena doesn't realize what that shared pain is.
right, yeah. I mean, like I think she can probably like deduce some elements of like this guy is not okay. And even if she doesn't know like the tragic Bruce Wayne backstory in this, she sees him get pretty fucked up a couple times,
Yeah.
and still keeps ticking. So like she knows he's not like invulnerable. But
Also, the
yeah,
fact that we only get one kiss is like super like teasing. Like we only get the one kiss. Like, but they tease kissing so much more than that, and I wanted to see them make out more. It was super good. You
okay,
saw them when they made out that one, like with the skyline with the
yeah.
sun rising,
And that's
was
that was
so
that
like
was what I was
so
saying.
great.
The like the use of daytime or like golden hour kind of shots or something like that. Again, really hits the right moods and moments. Um, but I
Also,
love that.
shout out to them. Like he's only captured, like we only see Batman truly during the daytime. At the end, after he's like taken on the mantle of hope.
Mhm.
Great
Yeah,
iconography there,
yeah.
man.
But like even that, like I love Batman showing up at the Iceberg Lounge and just being like, who I am, and
So
and
good.
and the twins being like, yeah, and fighting, and then we get like a wonderful reprise later of like him saying the exact same words but as Bruce Wayne, and having a very different experience. But yeah, like
People were more
he
believing
just
that the other twin was more believing that Batman showed up than Bruce Wayne, which
yeah,
tells you all you need to know about who Bruce Wayne is in this
yeah,
film.
exactly. But yeah, so I love like again, I just love the amount of time that he is as Batman in this. Like and the like the thing that kind of the Riddler says of this is like, just like with me, this is who you really are. I see that now. I've been there. I understand that, like, when you are behind the mask, you are who you are truly meant to be, is another great parallel between the two characters. But going back to the
Also, a
Catwomanness,
great note because traditionally Joker doesn't really wear a mask. He
Riddler.
wears like the domino mask, but that's it.
Yeah, yeah, Riddler. Um,
Oh, did I say?
yeah, you said Joker,
Oh,
which
my
we
bad.
will obviously talk about that one as
Oh
well.
my god.
But
Oh,
the last little thing I want to say on the Catwoman thing, obviously she is also very set on vengeance and like has her mind set on one thing, especially when she finds out, that her Annika died brutally at the hands of Falcone. Um,
which is a
uh,
real wild thing to find out your dad, and then also piecing together that your dad murdered your mom.
yeah. It's like I love that because I love like Batman's ability to keep her from going down the bad path. Like, yeah, she's definitely flirting on the wrong side of the law and happy to, like, steal shit and whatever, but like he helps prevent her from, like, going that step too far and killing Falcone, and taking her, like, vengeance. And I love that line of, like, he has to pay, but you don't have to pay with him or something. Whatever the line is, I thought was just a, like, the absolute right thing to say to try and convince her, like, fine, fine, I will not do it this way. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. Do you want to segue into the quote unquote unnamed Arkham prisoner? You're muted.
I literally had to Google it because I didn't remember to look it up last night. And what, you got to be kidding me?
Yeah, Barry Keegan, or Keon, I think, who was most recently in the Eternals. We saw him
Which
in
I
that.
literally just saw a little bit ago. So
Yeah.
this is wild.
Yeah.
This is absolutely wild. That is so cool. That is a great choice.
Uh-huh.
And I did not realize it until this moment because guess what? They showed us. They didn't tell us he was playing it, and that's perfect.
Yeah. It was because we talked about it when we did the Eternals episode of that D Plus show. Like, I mentioned that he was in the Batman, and I think at the time he was like, he had some other name that he was credited under, and it was like the rumors at that point were like he's in Gordon's GCPD or something like that. He's somebody
Yeah, I
in the
remember we
GCPD.
talked about that. Yeah.
And whether or not, like, oh, maybe he's secretly the Riddler or something like that. Like, there were definitely rumors that he was going to be playing somebody else. But yeah, seeing him kind of pop up very much in the shadows and stuff. Like, as soon as I heard his voice, I was like, oh, yep, he's definitely playing a new version of the Joker. And I love that so much of that scene is him just being or we're only getting him, like, in voice, and then when they do kind of show him, it's full in shadows and stuff, but you definitely see, like, the wild hair, you see some
The
kind of, like,
nose,
facial
the
scars,
face.
and yeah,
Yeah.
you definitely see, like, you don't see bright white and like, not giant colors suddenly out of nowhere in this movie,
For
but
me, it
like
was the
it's very
nose.
much
Whatever.
like
Yeah.
enough to see that this is a Joker that is not Jack Nicholson just, like, in face paint stuff. This is some sort of, like, facial deformed Joker out there ready to be a madman.
The fact that they are capturing the actual facial silhouette from the comics. Once again, like if you were telling me, oh, they're using prosthesis stuff to do that, I'm like, oh, why would you do that? But I already saw what they did with prosthesis work
Yeah.
with freaking
Colin Farrell.
Colin Farrell.
Yeah.
Colin Farrell as the Penguin. I was like, I don't know about that. He's going to be like a slimy, greasy, like hot dude, okay? And it's like, no, they do an amazing job of like, oh my god, I loved Colin Farrell as the Penguin. Just the way that he just disappears into the role with the prosthetics is just incredible. But the fact that they are showing off the silhouette of like what the Joker looks like in like when people do like artistic renditions of a real life Joker.
Mm-hmm.
That is it. You have the nose silhouette is perfect. You have everything about his face looked amazing, and I didn't recognize who it was. And seeing who the actor is, I'm like, you are kidding me. that guy is doing this. He's amazing. He did an amazing job. I can't wait. I'm so excited. But also, like, the way that he connects with Paul Dano's Riddler when he gives the riddle of, like, like
what
what valuable
increases,
thing,
or what
decreases in value the more you have of it, and increases the less you have of it, or like whatever the full riddle is. And he goes, a friend. And it's like they bond over a riddle, which is perfect. And of course, the Riddler being much more of a manic, like, psychopath totally fits into being like a friend with the Joker in Arkham.
Yeah.
And the Joker being a sociopath who's leading Paul Dano's psychopath on with a riddle is perfect for him. I'm so excited for what this could be, what this could end up being.
Yeah.
And just the way that they surprise us with it and the way that it's done is just so well.
That's I do want to touch on I love there's an element of I love how many people are left alive at the end of this that like can return, and maybe the next one is just a Riddler and Joker team up trying to take down the Batman. But also I love just the idea, and the Penguin can still be freaking Colin Farrell being amazing in this as this character. But I also love like how devastatingly successful the Riddler was. Like, obviously he took out 3 of his 4 primary targets. Like he straight up kills them. But then like on top of it, he blows the seaboard and floods downtown Gotham.
Which
probably
is such a great like
killing a ton more people, and had his like cult of followers like succeeded even more, would have like just completely decimated. But like as it is, the Gotham at the end of this movie is in tatters. It is under martial law. The National Guard is being called in to try and help and stuff like that. Like, Gotham is not in a good place at the end of this movie, which is just going to breed even more people along the lines of the Riddler, like the people that it has already shown that the Riddler had a cult of personality that followed him and like bought into his message.
50 something followers
500
that he had.
It was 500 followers.
500 something followers.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Like on his like little like dark web like video kind of thing. Many of them obviously
his literally
show
dark
up
web MySpace
and are the people that Batman takes out there in the not Madison Square Garden kind of thing. But yeah, there's still others out there, and even the people who weren't following him on the dark web, like when they go to the funeral for the mayor, there's clearly just people. It very much like it was very reminiscent of the Joker, which I'm sure like these were obviously being kind of conceived of in vacuums from one another a little bit, but like it's very much he has tapped into a messaging of the downtrodden, and they're tired of lies from corrupt politicians and stuff, and they don't have that hope that Batman will eventually try and give them. So I think you'll
because
see
all he's been giving them is vengeance.
Yeah, exactly. I think the Gotham that we leave the movie in is still rife for new threats to pop up outside of Arkham. Obviously, there's something brewing in Arkham now, but I think there can still be other voices that will try. I mean, they talk about it like with Falcone dead, there will be a power vacuum that is going to be filled, whether that's a Black Mask type of thing, and we see that again or something. I don't know, but like I think there's definitely a significant potential in a future sequel, and I'm excited for it and here for it. And yeah, again, I love that like the Riddler to a degree wins.
He does.
And he wins big. He doesn't like get everything he wanted, but he gets like 80% of what he wanted. And the city suffers as a result. Like Batman wasn't enough. And so yeah, maybe he will realize that and take on a ward in a future movie or something like that.
Maybe, yeah. I think also it's like but at the same time that was also still Batman feeding the city vengeance, right? Like
right.
He was still doing the vengeance thing.
Yeah.
And it isn't until like the very end of this that it turns out like he takes on the mantle of hope and does what he does with that. But Um, yeah, but yeah, the Riddler was successful on a lot of levels. But the thing about the Riddler is the Riddler doesn't think he's successful unless he got everything he wanted,
Mm-hmm.
which is why he was so upset, why he was lamenting with Batman about Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
Which,
And
by the way,
and
just that
and
red
when
herring,
like
the red herring
the
is
new
so good.
mayor doesn't get killed by his, like, because he knows he's going to be in custody by the time
Yep,
the water floods and everything. Like, he knows he's not going to be there for the final reckoning, or the I don't remember what that final
Judgment
clue
Day,
was. Not Judgment Day, but like, or
Doomsday.
the I mean, like, yeah, he refers to it as Judgment Day. I'm just saying, the like, a real change, I
Mm,
think. Yeah. The thing he
yeah,
describes
it is.
as a
Yeah,
real change. Like, he knows he's not going to be there for that. He's going to be in custody or whatever, but still.
which just makes his character better.
Yeah.
Paul Dano's Riddler is just so great in comparison to like just anything we've ever gotten. He's the perfect choice for it. Like Paul Dano's, I'm a big fan of Paul Dano's acting. Ever since I saw him in Little Miss Sunshine, I've been kind of like keeping a tab on his career. He's
It's
just a phenomenal actor.
it's interesting because, like, I've seen Little Miss Sunshine and I enjoyed it at the time, but like, I've definitely is he the kid in Little Miss Sunshine? I mean, he had to be, right? Had to be like the
He's
youngest
the
brother or
brother.
whatever.
He's
Um
the so
or
there's
like, there's like Abigail Breslin, and then like he's the next one up or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
yes, because
he was young at the time, is what I'm saying.
he was a
Um
teenager. Yeah,
yeah,
he
yeah.
was like 19 when he took the role, and he was playing a 17-year-old.
Okay.
It's phenomenal, like a phenomenal role. He kills it.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, dang, this actor is like around my, like just a little bit older than me. And I've just kept an eye on his career, and he's done like a ton of indie stuff. Once again, like this film taps into like the indie scene in a big way.
Mm-hmm.
Like the fact that it has like the biggest actor it has is like Colin Farrell and Robert Pattinson, which are not like the like it's not Ben Affleck, and it's not Christian Bale. Well, Christian Bale, I guess, was a little bit more.
I mean, I would say all of, like, both of those examples at least were like, they weren't big blockbuster people until they were Batman. Similar, like, Robert Pattinson might be like the most blockbuster because he had the Twilight lineage behind him.
I think that's it. But yeah,
But
like when was the last time
just
Colin Farrell was in something that was a big blockbuster? You know?
I mean, well, yeah, exactly. Like, Colin Farrell is like, he's a known thing, and I mean, I would say at least Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, the first one, was probably
There
like
you go.
one of his more recent. But like, he was also in, True Detective, and he's another one that has done like a ton of those indie kinds of things. But what I was gonna say, like, you're ever since you've seen Paul Dano in something, like, you've been kind of following. I feel the same way about Jeffrey Wright, which I remember first seeing in the Angels in America, like, mini series years and years and years ago.
Oh wow, he was in
And
that.
yeah, he's Pryor in that. And it was like the first thing I feel like I'd seen him in, and everything he pops up in nowadays, I'm just like, good for you, Jeffrey Wright, good for you. So like, when he was doing Westworld, and when he's in Last of Us Part 2, and when he's in this, and and when he's in, the Bond movies or whatever, it's like, yeah, good for you, man. Because he's
Jeffrey Wright.
like,
The first time I saw him was in Casino Royale.
yeah, there you go.
So I've been like Jeffrey Wright from Casino Royale. You go, dude.
Yeah.
Like he got in Westworld. He was amazing in Westworld as Bernard.
Yep.
Like I love that guy. Like I love all the like casting in this film was absolutely perfect. I've never seen a better cast for Batman.
Yeah, that was one of the things we
Ever.
talked about. Like, the just top to bottom, everybody's knocking their performance out of the park, but also because it's such a long movie, we get time with all of those, and we get relationships between all of these characters and sequences. And so yeah, we get, multiple Jim and Batman scenes, as opposed to like maybe the one or two that we'd get in prior movies. We get
Also, can we also talk about how perfect Gordon was at how perfect Jeffrey Wright was at portraying Gordon as a cop who was like really losing his faith in the city.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like he's already lost enough faith in the police department that he's working with the Batman. But on top of that, you're seeing him lose faith in the last few people he had faith in.
Yeah.
His
Also,
old partner, yeah, like it's.
I was just gonna say,
It's so good.
I misspoke. He was Belize in the Angels in America
Okay.
thing. In I think Patrick Wilson actually was or no, Justin Kirk was prior Walter. There you go. Patrick Wilson was also in it, but yes. Anyway, Angels in America, back in like 2003 is the first thing I remember seeing him in, and he's just so good in it. So, shout out to the excellent career that he has had over the
Yeah.
years.
Yeah, like I just don't think that there's been a better cast for it. Better like, and I like, and it's funny too because this is the cast that I think people who have been the most hard on.
Mm-hmm.
Robert Pat, like my brother-in-law, up until like one of the more recent trailers that he finally actually sat down and watched it. And even then, he's been on the fence about Robert Pattinson as Batman because all he knows him from is Twilight.
Exactly. I think that's like, it's such a weird thing because I follow a lot of. I follow not probably a lot, but like I follow enough of film Twitter that pretty much everybody in film Twitter was like, yeah, Robert Pattinson was in Twilight, but like if you've watched anything Robert Pattinson has done in the last 15 years, this is a great choice.
100%.
But so
That's
many
how I
of
was. So,
exactly like
yeah.
so much of not the Batman audience, I would say, is as in touch with the indie scene of films and stuff. So yeah, like for the the general public and stuff, it is okay. This would be like the guy who was in 50 Shades of Grey getting suddenly cast as, a new Iron Man or something like that. And it's like,
Yeah.
what? Whether or not that guy's been doing a ton of stuff, in the scene, it's like, that's the thing everybody knows him for. This is going to be weird. And
Listen, you cannot convince me that Robert Pattinson wasn't a great choice when I saw that man who's from England become a like dimwit thug from Coney Island. I've seen Robert Pattinson become that.
mhm.
I 1000% believed he could become like Bruce Wayne Batman. Like I have seen that man disappear into a role and make me 100% believe that he had been raised on Coney Island his entire life. You cannot tell me that like he like that Robert Pattinson's not a phenomenal actor. Like I've seen him just disappear into so many roles and become such incredible characters that like there's no way he couldn't do Batman. Which is why when people were freaking, but once again, it's when people were freaking out about Robert Pattinson. Oh, they're getting the guy from like the vampire boy from Twilight to be like. I'm like, people just don't know, man. They just don't know.
But it's also so weird because like, it's also like it's like those criticisms exist in a vacuum because the Heath Ledger stuff was the exact same thing when he got cast as the Joker. It was like, how's this going to work? And then obviously like goes on to be one of the best performances of all time kind of thing. Obviously also tragic elements to that story, but like people should just know to not like judge this until like let the product speak for itself. And maybe they're maybe they were willing to try that with Jared Leto, but then Jared Leto sucks, and and they were like, no, never again. We're just going to prejudge this.
We heard stories from sets about how crazy he was, and like, well, I mean, Heath Ledger locked himself in a like by himself for like more than a month.
Yeah,
and drove himself insane. So like maybe it's worth it. And turns out it wasn't worth it.
Yeah, there was a like I saw an article the other day that was basically like, Paul Dano, had trouble sleeping at night because of the character, whatever. And I saw like one of my favorite tweets was basically like, just one of these days, I want somebody who does a Batman movie to be like, yeah, no, I'm completely well adjusted. I had no problems. I showed up, I acted, and then I went home and slept. It was fine. And like part of me is like, if you probably ask Colin Farrell that question, Colin Farrell definitely seems like the kind of guy who just like shows up, does the job, isn't taking it home with him and like, brooding in this kind of stuff. He's probably fine. He's probably
he's also not playing.
adjusted.
He's also not playing a psychopath.
True. I mean, he's playing a little bit of a psychopath, but like it's definitely like this idea, like and it's very much. I see it so often in the Batman Joker side, like kinds of roles and stuff. Like the actor and me also just like routinely hate seeing that of like, yeah, you guys aren't healthy if these are the kinds of like relationships you're having and with these roles. Like you need to be able to go home and like be okay at the end of the day. Otherwise you're not acting, you are just a sociopath and a concern. So yeah. Anywho, I don't know if you're
sorry about that. My headset went like
Yeah.
died on me all of a sudden out of nowhere.
No problem. I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to touch on before we wrap up. Any
Yeah.
other beats or moments?
What did I say earlier about I was putting a pin in something?
I don't remember.
Something about Zoe during when we were talking about Zoe Kravitz's performance.
Okay.
Was it? Let's see, the kissing. The doesn't realize that they are. I'm sorry. I'm trying to backtrack the conversation to that point and think about like where we were at. That I was like, I'll put a pin in this because I want to talk about it later.
Did you want to talk
And I'm
about
trying to
like
remember.
their ending?
Oh, that's what I want to talk
together?
about. No, nope. This is what I wanted to talk about. I love that the way that Batman gets around is in disguise on a motorcycle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like he, like I was super curious about like how this was gonna go because we were like, what's it would do with the eye makeup and stuff. I'm like, well, he was just Batman. He was in his Batman outfit like a minute ago. I knew that's where they were going to go with that.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that they basically dealt with it, it's like the reason why nobody knows how Batman gets around is because Batman is just a dude on a motorcycle.
Yeah.
Like perfect. It's so perfect.
Unless he's in a badass like tank of a car that that like the Batmobile sequence, I think.
Oh, isn't that such a haunting, like horror-esque sequence?
Exactly. Yeah. Like when when they're at the docks or whatever, and he like just like he's revving the engine, like this giant afterburner kind of thing, like, and he's just sitting there trying to put the fear of God into these thugs, into these goons, into Penguin's people.
And he succeeds.
He freaks them the hell out, and then like also the thing backs it up. Like obviously the Penguin gets away. You get, like we have this great car chase, elements of which we'd seen in the trailers, but it was still like there was so much that we hadn't seen that I loved like how we got to some of those places. And it like I also loved like I got this the impression almost like that it was them racing down, you know, unoccupied kind of streets or something, but no, they are doing this in a full-on busy highway kind of thing. Like shit is flying because trucks are spinning out and tipping off or whatever, and the Penguin basically like risks it all and like basically like causes this like multi-car pile up, and like as we've seen
and
in
an
the trailers,
explosion.
thinks that he's gotten away with it, and he's so joyous and so excited, and then like the fear of God is back in him as the Batmobile comes flying through the flames, and rams his car, and he flips over and stuff like that. It was like such a great sequence for that car that like, and I said last night, like that car is introduced in such a dramatic and cinematic fashion that it is very much like designed for, you didn't see this in the trailers at all. Like it will be so much more impactful if you hadn't, because it is introduced as almost as a horror villain. It is in the shadows and you only see parts of it, and it is there trying to scare people and stuff like that, much like so much of the Batman stuff.
Its introduction, I love its introduction because it shows that Bruce Wayne's actually like a big car guy, on a personal level, because he's and it's like, oh, he bought that? No, he built that.
Yeah,
he built that because we see that he likes that style of car.
It's in his garage later.
It's in his garage, yeah. But what's amazing about it is we see it in pieces earlier. Like it's like, why is he riding around on a motor? Like, because the Batmobile isn't put together yet. Like you see this like borderline jet engine thing that he has out like lifted, and you're like, oh, is that going to go in the car? It goes, no, that goes on the back of the car. The front of the car also is like has a revved up super engine in it, but it's like, how does Batman have such a cool car? It has two engines, and one of them is like literally like a jet propulsion engine, and it's so cool to see. Like he put it together himself. This is like, it's like in pieces when we first see it. It hasn't been put together yet, but it's also the same kind of car that we see him drive to the memorial in.
Yeah.
Which is like a classic style car. It's just done in such a way that it's like Bruce Wayne doesn't have a tank. Like Batman doesn't have a tank. Like Bruce Wayne didn't do that. It's not the like, no, like it's not the not Nolan. It's not the Burton-esque, Schumacher-esque, like designed like long ass car. It is a souped up muscle car from like the 70s. and it kicks ass. I
Yeah.
love that vehicle. And
I
also I love this, like I love the aspect also of just like Batman has like it's like these are normal things that he's souped up
yeah.
and done stuff with. It's
Uh,
great.
and talking about that reminded me, like, I also want to touch on like how great just his introduction in general is. Of he is like we see this like montage of crimes. We see a crime in somebody robbing a convenience store. We see some people tagging a city building or stuff, and then we see like these thugs on a subway kind of car, and all of them have this moment where they see the bat symbol and start to kind of freak out about it. They know what that means. They know the potential fear behind that. And one of
Dude, the
them
fact that
backs up and gets hit by like a cop car or a taxi or something. I couldn't tell if it
a
was
taxi, yeah.
which it was supposed to be, but like, yeah, somebody basically like somebody is so afraid they back into it. Like the taggers run, and then we see like the thugs, the gang of thugs beating up that one guy, and they hear like Batman walking out of the shadows, and like that's who
Well,
Batman is facing off against tonight.
what I love about that scene though is that every single one of them after they see the symbol looks to the deepest darkest shadows of where they're at
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
just stares.
Yeah.
And just and it's like because they're thinking at any moment the Batman's going to be walking out of the shadows towards them.
Mm-hmm.
And then the people it happens to, like that kid who was like being initiated,
Yeah.
like he sees the sign, is so afraid, but nobody else saw it, and so they push him along anyway.
Yeah.
And then he's like the one that like takes the first look at this, like they're like, get him, like start attacking this poor defenseless man that we have like ready for you to just assault.
Mm-hmm.
And he can't stop looking at the shadows.
Yeah.
And eventually you hear the sound of like you said, Batman walking out.
Yeah.
And it's like so good on so many levels.
And it also hammers home that like the fear that he has instilled is not confined to the criminals of Gotham. Like he takes out the goons, and then their victim is like, please don't hurt me. Like thinks he's going to be attacked next. And I think that's like the first hint of like, oh, this isn't working. Like he's going to need to come up with another solution. So yeah,
the crime rate is not dropping.
Yeah.
Like what am I doing? That's not like I'm doing what I thought I should be doing, which is instilling vengeance into the night.
Yeah.
But it's not working. And instead it's creating something else.
Which again ties into another one of those parallels that I loved of like, obviously we're introduced to Bruce taking, observational notes or whatever, keeping his diary kind of thing. And then like, we get that the Riddler has been, keeping notebooks filled with stuff, and like they're both compulsive in the same ways. They're just channeling it slightly differently.
We find out that it may not be his original identity, but he is a forensic accountant, and he's been looking into the renewal plan. Like he has forensically figured out and by hand written out the entirety of all like the things that he found suspicious in the renewal plan, and was able to piece together the conspiracy that Falcone has been using it for the last 20 years, ever since Thomas Wayne died.
Yeah. So that's like Batman's not the only detective in here. Yeah. Just so much good in this movie. Any other bits or any final thoughts you wanted to discuss before we wrap up?
The only thing I have to say is I sincerely pray we get a sequel. This is a universe of Batman that I do not want to leave yet.
Mm-hmm.
It combines so many different elements that we never get to see in Batman films, and I just want to see more of it. It was so great.
Yeah, I very much enjoyed it, and I also liked. Obviously, it's not like. It's not, I would say, a key focal point, but the movie does have like some lighthearted moments, or at least some like dark comedy moments and stuff. Like the thumb drive bit I thought was hilarious,
dude,
in the worst of ways. And like that sequence of like, try this,
hold this,
like, yeah,
try this,
like try using the thumb as to unlock the drive, like just like there's such a macabre sense of humor to elements of this film. And there were definitely also moments where I was like, I could sense what was coming, and there was such like tension in me that like it only left my body through laughter. Like I knew that like Batman's about to beat up these goons or something like that, and it just comes out as a chuckle. Um yeah, I thought there was just such like a like and it hit in moments where it felt needed. Like it felt like you needed a little bit of humor in some of those beats to like I guess another one just from a visual perspective is the DA comes out and like there's this whole bomb scare, and then the next thing we see he's just kind of like alone by himself, like not even like scared as much as like exhausted and sad as the bomb disposal robot kind of like inches its way up to him. Just
Dude,
like
when they're like, "What's your price?" He goes, it could be. It depends on it." It's like, "What's your price?" He goes, 10 G's, 10,000. It's like the amount that it cost for him to look the other way on a case
mhm.
was $10,000. That's it.
$10,000 a month. He does say ten
A
thousand
month, yeah.
dollars in monthly installments.
But
Yeah.
not even per case, just 10 grand a month, 120 an extra $120,000 a year
I mean
to like,
that's
which
probably
is a lot of money. It's
I was
a
gonna
good
say
amount
it's
of
probably
money.
like double a DA salary or something like that. So or like it yeah. It probably was
But
a
like,
an extra pretty penny for him.
I'm sure, but at the same time, I can't help but think like that's what it took for your dereliction of duty. Like that's all it cost for you to like look the like you'd expect. Oh, he's been bribed. Oh, he's probably making like $1 million a year off of that. No, like such a small amount for the damage that does
Yeah. Yeah.
is so, and it boggles the mind to think like he was so. But also they've emphasized throughout the film this guy's so little. He's so small as
Yeah.
like he's so small of a person.
Mm-hmm.
So like so utterly just like such a pissant of a human being,
I mean, it's also
and
like
I love it.
they've all been bought in for so long that like their careers were made off of this case years ago, kind of thing. So like they all kind of got thrust into the spotlight while already under Falcone's thumb.
Mhm.
So like they're up there, but like there isn't faith in them. They kind of broke the system. But yeah,
Yeah.
just lots
Also,
of lots of good
they're
stuff there.
still, but also they're so afraid of Falcone
Yeah.
because he was willing to die. Because he even says, he goes, "You're willing to die for this." He goes, "It's not just me. Like there are people I care about that will like be killed and harmed and like worse than killed."
Yeah.
And it's like, and so he's like, "Yeah, I'm willing to die." It's like, okay, so he has principles on some level. His life is not as important, but once again, that pulls into the Bruce Wayne's "I'm not afraid to die"
Yeah.
issue, which
Yeah.
is if there are people you care about, you're not afraid to lose your life over something if it keeps them safe.
Yeah.
God, it's so good on so many levels, man. This movie is layered in a way you just do not expect a comic book movie to get layered in, and it's possibly like I think, like there are certain things about The Dark Knight that I think will remain as like an uncontested like feat that film did on a lot of levels. But I don't think categorically, like top to bottom, it's a better film than this movie. Granted, I have to rewatch it at some point soon because I haven't seen it in quite a few years. And now I'm thinking about it, I'm actually thinking about how that movie is actually laid out, and it's actually pretty damn good.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's the opening with the Joker squad going through that, and I think part of it is also like I haven't watched it lately, and I haven't watched it in the right context of like just as a film by itself.
Mm-hmm.
I often think of it as like the high point of a trilogy.
Yeah.
And so if I don't let it be like weighed down by other films, like is The Dark Knight a better film than The Batman? I don't know, but The Batman makes a strong case for why it is better than The Dark Knight, and I think that is just like Matt Reeves did a magical job with this film, putting it together the way that he did,
Yeah.
especially during a goddamn pandemic.
True. Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, filming had to stop at some point pretty early on, I think. Like
Twice. They had to stop twice.
I think basically like the first day it was like, well, Robert Pattinson's got COVID or something like that. I was like, well, shit. But yeah, I think there is absolutely a case to be made. I don't know where I personally fall in terms of like the ranking of the Batman things or whatever, but if somebody were to say like, "Oh yeah, I think this is the best Batman that's ever been made," I'm gonna be like, I'm certainly open to hearing your rationale behind that. And then at the same point, like this is very much, I think, a such a in some ways a departure from what we're so used to seeing in terms of a Batman movie. Most notably, like the amount of detective work that he is in this makes for a slower experience, and it is again a long
Mhm.
movie. And so, if people don't have the patience for that, I can also see them really not liking this. I can see this being a very mixed, divisive kind of Batman. It worked for me though, and I'm here for it, and I'm excited to see the potential of what comes next. But I also won't be surprised to see people put this down, on their low on their list and stuff. I would be shocked if people put this below like the Schumacher stuff, and even the people who put this, below. Like, and I'm sure there are some who would put this below like Tim Burton stuff. I'm just like, I don't understand that because
Uh,
those aesthetics just don't work for me.
I think
From what
89
they were,
Batman
but
might get put higher, but I don't see how people could say this is not better than Batman Returns.
that's I mean, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, it's real the Batman is real good. And I'd be very curious to see where it goes from here and what we get and if they do end up going down the rabbit hole of bringing
I'm
in
just gonna yeah.
a Robin at some point down the line, because obviously like Catwoman's going off to Bloodhaven, so like they're setting up that this is a larger that there is a a world outside Gotham kind of thing here. And I'll be curious to see who comes into the fold next if they go down the path, because there's also a lot of this that feels, if not inspired by it, feels very much like in partnership with a lot of the like the Arkham game stuff. From his suit to how he moves to how he like fights, I think there's a lot of those kinds of vibes to it. So I'd be curious to see kind of, do we get a Hugo Strange in one of these? Do we get a new incarnation of Scarecrow moving forward or something like that? What do we see in a future Batman? What rogues come up, or do we just get the Riddler and Joker teaming up to try and take down the Bat? Who knows? But I am here for it. I think that is gonna do it for this episode. Thank you, Cam, for joining me not only to see the movie last night, but also for joining me to discuss here. Always fun chatting and doing these spoiler casts, especially when it's a movie I think we both enjoy like this. So that is going to do it for this episode. You can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Cam?
You know what? I want to give a massive shout out to want to bring up again, if you haven't checked out Jazz's the game that Jazz is working on, Retrograde. They're pretty close to their goal. Go ahead and check that out. It's super cool. If I was working right now, then I would be pretty like, if it worked like if I was working right now, I would be like, I would have put money into it, but unfortunately I'm not. But I like that's my recommendation. Like if I was in the position to be putting money into it, I would have done so already, and it looks super cool. I'm actually going to be showing it to my brother-in-law later, who's a big fan of board games, and so like, yeah, spread the word about this because it looks cool and it deserves to get back.
Cool. Yep. That is here in its final week, so definitely check that out before it is gone. You can follow me over at Trevor J. Starkey. I will say go check out. This week is going to be Nintendo Week on our Let's Plays. The Tuesday Let's Play is me sitting down for the first. It ended up being a little bit longer than I was anticipating. It's like the first 2+ hours, first couple chapters of Triangle Strategy, and then. For the Thursday Let's Play this week, I sat down with the Kirby in the Lost whatever, like the new Kirby Switch demo that came to the Switch last week. Uh, a fascinating game that is very geared towards like children in a way. I was like, oh, this is just like purely a child's game, but I'm sure some people are going to be like, this is a game of the year contender and stuff. I'm just like, I don't know. It doesn't completely give me Balan Wonderworld vibes, but it was like almost Balan Wonderworld vibes.
Oh, that's not good.
I will, sorry. I like, it is definitely better than Balan Wonderworld, but in terms of
Okay.
like the audience, it's targeting,
Gotcha.
it is
Yeah.
like, this feels like this is a game geared towards kids 8 and under, is like who it's really targeted for. And there will be, Nintendo fans that will enjoy it and stuff. But yeah, I like, because I was playing even on like the hardest mode or whatever, because it's like, here's a hard setting and then here's like a super easy casual setting kind of thing. And I was like, all right, it's a Kirby game, I'll try the hard setting. And I think I got hit like twice throughout the entire thing. Like, I like didn't die at all
God,
anywhere
gamer
along the
skills right
line
there,
and
man.
stuff.
God, gamer
No,
skills.
not at all.
Like,
But like, it was just like, this is a very, very easy game. And so yeah, it'll be interesting to see what that does. But yeah, you can go check out those Let's Plays on our YouTube this week, youtube.com/that nerdy site. And also I want to give a shout out to our upcoming slate of That D Plus show. You can go find out in one of our recent tweets. I'm going to try and be better about basically being like, here's what's coming up, so people can actually like watch ahead of time and follow along. Seems like that's probably a better idea for that show. So this week we're intending to do Jungle Cruise. Then the following week is going to be a Behind the Attraction episode, as I am going off to Disneyland again next week. Then we will have West Side Story, and we will then the fourth week out, we will kick off April 1st with the opening, the first episode of Moon Knight, the next MCU series. So yeah, keep an eye out for all that stuff in the future. Like beyond that, I definitely want to at some point probably do Turning Red, the new Pixar movie that I think comes out this week. And there will be kind of some other Disney Plus things in the pipeline, I'm sure as well. So yeah, keep an eye out for all that stuff. You can find all of our stuff over at That Nerdy Site, or go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us. Once again, if you liked what you heard, please rate, review, like, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Thank you for listening. As always, stay nerdy and be good to each other.